Hey, this is Sarah again, and today we're going to do some brush surgery. So we're at the line finder frame, and here's the multiple bank, and here's our multiple brushes, and one of them is in pretty sad shape. Specifically, this on the right side is pretty gross looking. If the camera would focus. Here, I'll show you what it's supposed to look like. That's a good one. Here's a bad one. See how the farthest right arm of the brush is, the left and right orientation of it is such that it's going to collide with the terminals when I move this rod up. See that? That's bad. And the more this rod moves up and down, the worse that's going to get. So what I have to do in this case is remove the brush from the rod, get it on the bench, bend it back into place, and then remount it. And that's going to involve unsoldering these 8 wires, marking what they were originally soldered to, because these were originally colorful, but now they've just turned brown. So color code is not going to be enough for me to determine what terminals these belong on. So I'm going to either mark them or set them in such a way that their location is obvious. Now, something to note is that this is a new style brush, which you can see is a bit more complex in design than the old style brush, which is the one immediately adjacent to it. You can see how the outer arms are quite different looking. The old style brush has these straight outer arms, and the new style brush has these really goofy bent ones. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is heat up my soldering iron and begin desoldering these wires from the terminals and laying them down in such a way that I can remember where they belong later on. And then we will go ahead and unmount the brush from the frame, and we'll bend the arms back into place. Alright, so we are going to start by desoldering these wires and trying not to burn ourselves. Attached. Okay. Also trying to not burn the individual wires as much as possible, because these irons do get very hot. Okay. So farthest left, middle right, farthest right. And then I need to undo these nuts right there. So we'll do that next. And I think I have just the wrench for that. said nuts, I should have said bolts. Being, of course, very careful not to drop the tiny irreplaceable bolt screw down into the line finder, because that would be a bad time. Here's the bracket that holds it on. Now, I should be able to just carefully pull the brush out of there. Let's see what's holding it. And there you have it. There is our bent brush. And you can see how this part of the arm looks totally gross. Let's take it over to the table and figure out what we have to do. Now, because I am a professional, a consummate professional, I'm working on this using a paper plate so that tiny little pieces don't scatter everywhere. First thing I want to do is just take a look at it, and I want to kind of quickly assess the damage. Now, the left, middle left, and right springs don't really look all that bad. It's if I ignore those and just kind of look at the rightmost one, that's the one that's ugly. I think what I'm going to do is take this right spring completely off this brush, and to do that I'll need to take out these two screws. The difficulty there is that this half of the brush assembly is essentially a sandwich. You have the screws, then below those screws you have a spacer, which is almost acting like a big washer, and then you have an insulating strip, then you have the brush, then another insulating strip, then another brush, then another insulating strip, and there could be more spacers in there as well, depending. I don't know. I won't know until I take it apart. Last time I did this was a real pain in the butt to get back together, because you kind of have to masterfully hold it all in one place. But in any case, let me go get my screwdriver and I'll be right back. Which BSP are you looking for?
226-400 or 226-500?
Should be there.
Yeah, this has got a huge range in it, and it's I've come through it and can't find any in that range.
That's weird.
What was...
Check the ones that are adjacent, because it might be they might not be in perfect order.
Okay.
You see the whole thing falls apart. So there's that part of the sandwich. Screw, metal spacer, insulating spacer. the actual spring comes off, and the rest of it falls apart. See? So it's going to be really fun to get that back together. In any case, here is the bent spring. So it looks like it's just been bent down and inward a little bit. The cool thing here is that you could see metal part of the tip here that actually contacts the terminals. Kind of reminds me of a tape head for like a cassette tape or a VHS tape player, but this is just the metal conductor and surrounded by its insulating holder here. So let's go ahead and bend this back.
That's the thing for using for the online collection of every VSP.
Yeah, I found the telephone collectors that went from a bunch of them. I was just kind of looking for a physical version of it.
I just feel like we've got to have step VSPs.
Not actually good.
I can't believe we don't have step VSPs. They just might not be, they might be somewhere else.
Yeah, so I found it online on telephonecollectors.info.
Right, because they're gonna have tons.
And they've got a bunch in the 226, 200, and 226, 565. Yeah, he seems to.
Better. Call that a success. Alright, so let's try to get this back together. This sandwich is going to be it's going to take me a couple tries. I'm terrifically sorry if my hand gets in the way, but there's going to be no way to avoid it, unfortunately. And there it is. Put it back into place, and it will hopefully last another, 100 years. Oh, before I put the brush back on, this might be a fun time to explain how the line finder brushes trip, which is how they actually close onto the terminals. The brushes by default are in an untripped position, meaning that these are not in contact with the terminals as they're going up and down. But when a brush is selected to hunt over a specific bank, it trips. And when it trips, the brushes look like this. See how they've closed up? And you can untrip it back to normal, and then trip it again. Now that trip mechanism is what brings these springs into contact with the actual terminals on the selector frame, whether it's a line finder or a district frame or a final or whatever. And then when the brush returns to normal at the bottom, it untrips just like that. So the trip mechanism is this little bar right here. And it's spring loaded. So as the brush goes up, when it's the one that's supposed to trip, this bar will get tripped like that. And there it is. And this is the bottom side of the brush. So if it was sitting on the frame, you'd see it sitting like that. And from the top side, you can see the springs that push it apart. Now, since this is a line finder brush, it trips differently than the ones on other selector frames, and that's because of how the line finder works. But even though it trips a little differently, the whole trip thing is still a concept, and it's still applicable. Alright, let's get this back on. Start at the top, twist it in, bring it down, being careful to make sure it's engaged properly with the terminals back here, which it is. So we'll bring it down as far as we can go. There. The next thing I'm going to do is attach this back plate. Finally, the middle one is what actually permanently mates the brush to the selector rod. This is going to definitely requires some adjustment, so I'll just eyeball it for now, which should be good enough. And then I'll adjust it more exactly once I have the wires soldered down. Needs to go a little bit higher. So that's not bad for guess, though this has to be measured down to like the 16th or the 32nd of an inch, so at some point I'm going to have to go back and level it properly. Let's get these wires soldered back together here. We will do the inside first, because that seems easier. Sorry about rocking the boat there. Okay, next two, these outside ones. You have to be pretty careful with these wires because they are obviously quite brittle. I don't want to cause any unnecessary damage. fixed brush. Let's try to trip it and see what happens. Pretty good. It's lined up pretty good as well. Anyway, that's repairing a multiple brush, one of the many crazy awesome things you have to do as a panel switch mechanic. Until next time, bye!